All right, so this is the activity that we started on Friday and then we finished it on Monday, but we really didn't have time to have a discussion about these review questions. So, without further ado, let's jump in, shall we? Okay, specifically focusing on question 1, they ask, will the solution be positive or negative when both numbers are the same sign? Another way you could think of that is when on the graph, both vectors, those are the arrows, point in the same direction. And the hint says, look at number 1a. So we're talking about in the table, we're talking about 1a. And then we're also talking about problem 2d, okay? So let's look at number 1a. First of all, 40 plus 10, that's regular addition. But now we're thinking about it as positive numbers. So positive 40 plus positive 10 is equal to positive 50. Nothing changed in terms of what we understand as addition. But if you look at the number line, as you can see, we begin at 0, we go to positive 40, and we're going to continue going in the positive direction, and so our answer is going to stay positive when both numbers are positive, okay? But if you look at problem 2, part D, this is a little bit of a trick question because here both numbers are the same sign yet again, but this time they're negative. You have a negative 20 plus a negative 15. And if we look at the graph of 2, part D, remember we were talking about temperature, so they began at 0 degrees Celsius. Negative 20 means that we went 20 in the negative direction, so we ended up right here. And if you keep on going in the negative direction, 15 more, 5, 10, 15, of course you're going to still be negative. So if both numbers are negative, it stays in the negative zone. All right, let's look at the next one. Question number 2, we want to know, is the solution going to be positive or negative when the negative number or vector is larger than the positive? So right here, it says C graph 1E. All right, so we can look at a lot of different situations right here, but if I look at number 1, part E, that's this one down here, you can see that negative 50, as far as like numbers go, 50 is more than 40, but it just happens to be negative. And in this case, the solution was negative 10. The reason for that, you can kind of visualize it with the graph right there, number 1, part E. So if we observe this, you begin on 0, and you went all the way out to 40 right here. But the magnitude of the negative number, in other words, the length of the arrow is longer, so it takes you all the way back to the negative zone, which is right here. And so the answer was negative. So whenever the negative number, or the arrow, the vector, right, is larger than the positive, then the answer will be negative. Okay? Let's move on. Problem number 3. Will the solution be positive or negative when the positive number is larger than the negative? So on this one, we're advised to look at number 1b plus the graph, number 1c plus the graph, 2a plus the graph, b plus the graph, c plus the graph. So there's a lot of them that we're going to look at. So that's 1b and c. We're going to look at these two, and then 2a, b, c. Going to look at these ones right here. All right, so in these cases, the positive number is larger than the negative number. So like 40 is more than 5, right? And 40 is positive, 5 is negative. We ended up with a positive answer. All right, okay, so 40 is positive, 30 is negative right there. 40 is more than 30. Again, we had a positive answer. That was B and C. If you look at ABC, you have a 20 and a 30. 30 is more than 20. And 30 happens to be positive, 20 happens to be negative. Look at that, we ended up with a positive answer. So far, whenever the positive number is larger than the negative number, we end up with a positive answer. And it seems like that pattern holds. That pattern seems to hold for part B as well. In part C, the negative number is bigger, and then we ended up with a negative answer, so that was the only one that was different. But let's look at the graphs. For B and C over here, as you can see, the positive arrow is much larger than the negative arrow for part B. We ended up with a positive answer, 35. In C, they're not that much different in size, but the positive arrow is red, and it is bigger than the negative arrow, which is blue, and so you end up with a positive answer, which was 10. Okay? For A and B, on problem 2, it's the same situation. The red arrow that stands for the positive is bigger. You have a positive answer, positive 10. Same thing for 2 part B. The red arrow is bigger. That's a positive arrow. It's bigger than the negative arrow, which is blue, and you end up with a positive 15 for your answer. Okay, last but not least, we're going to finish the sentence. Adding a negative number to a positive number, regardless of the order, is the same as... So, over here, we're told to look at number 1, part A, B, C, D, E for your graph. Okay? I'm sorry, for your table. And I don't know that A really helps us, so I'm going to take off A. But if you do look at B, C, D, and E, notice that when you add a negative number to a positive number, for part B, the answer was 35. And then if you wrote it like a subtraction problem, the answer was still 35. So adding the positive to the negative was the same as subtraction. That pattern is the same for part C also. 40 plus negative 30, you got 10. 40 minus 30 was the same as 10. So adding a negative number to the positive number was like subtraction. Same thing for part C, and I think that was part C. Part D, you ended up getting the same answers, and part E, you ended up getting the same answers. So adding a negative number to a positive number, regardless of the order, is the same as subtracting.